YouTube reports that there's a 95% increase in content creators trying to grow their audience on their platform in 2022. That's compared to the same period in the previous year. So it's very important that you stand out. Let's look at how we can do that in Final Cut Pro. What's up guys, it's your boy JT and welcome back to the channel. First of all, thank you so much for the support in the last couple of videos. They're really doing well and I can't thank you guys enough. Today we're going to be learning Final Cut Pro, and that's going to be right from importing your clips in, to cutting, to color grading, to editing audio, to adding effects and transitions and titles. So pretty much the full kind of spectrum of Final Cut Pro, but just at a beginner's level. As I said earlier on in the intro, with this many people and content creators coming onto YouTube, it's essential that your clips stand out from the rest. So let's get straight into it. Okay, we are going to start off with opening the library. So if you haven't got one, you will create a new library. And you want to choose where you want to save that. So I am going to save that on my external hard drive. So if you just locate the folder, and then you can name it what you want. I'll call it test for this occasion. Within a library you have an event. Within the event you will have a project, and then within the project you'll have clips. But once you get your library in one of the events, you can create new events if you want and name them as you want. Basically events are like folders. In there what you want to do is go and import your media. So you've got two kind of ways you can do it. Either you go in and import the media this way and select your media and import, or if you open a new project, that will then unlock this section here where then you could just drag media straight into that. But I, as a starting point, like using the import media button. So if we click on that first and then go and find your footage, so if we go in, and what I'd recommend is having a nice folder structure where you've got your audio, your B-roll, your video clips, and I like putting thumbnails in there so that I've got everything within one folder, nice and neat. But if you go in here and we find our clips, and you can shift and click to select multiple clips, and then from here you want to click the import all button, and that brings in your clips here. And then the next thing you want to do is go and create a new project. So when you click on create new project, you've got these project settings here. So the first thing it's asking for is a name, so we will call it tutorial, and it's saying which event is that in, and we've only got one event on the side, so that's the event that it's picked. And then you can either use it as automatic, which it will base the video settings, which is the resolution and also the frames per second based on the first clip you put on, or you can go in custom settings. So in here you can choose the video format, and then the resolution alongside the frame rate. After that you can also pick the codec and the color space. Pretty much codec, color space and audio I leave as is, and it's just the video, the resolution and the rate, so the frames per second is what I amend. So for this one we'll just do 1080p HD and we'll pick 30 frames per second. So if we go in there, we will see now the timeline is unlocked. Okay, so if we look at the interface of Final Cut Pro, you have on the left hand side is the library with the events, and then within this section here you've got the project. So if you click on that, any clips that you have on this project will automatically display, because you can have multiple projects within one event. Under the project you can see here we've got all of our clips, right? In the middle you've got the preview, which can be resized depending on how you want your layout basically. Key thing for me is I like getting a nice big preview. What you can also do is click this dual screen button here, and that will then drag the preview onto a second screen. When you click that button there, you can also choose what you want on your second screen, whether that's the preview, so the viewer, whether it's the timeline, the section at the bottom, or whether it's the browser, which is your media browser section here on the left. So that allows you to choose which one of these three you would like on your second screen. Okay, on the right hand side is where you have your settings. So for example, if I drag this clip on here, on the right hand side you got the settings. So you have the video inspector, the color inspector, the audio inspector, and then the info inspector. We'll dive into these in a minute. But moving on the bottom, we have the timeline, which is where you'll build up your video. And then at the bottom right, you have the effects and transitions browser down here, which does as it says on the tin, and it allows you to browse all of the effects and also all of the transitions. Adding media to the timeline is nice and easy. It's as simple as doing a drag and drop, so you can drag your clip straight to the timeline, or there's also a couple of other ways that you can do this as well. So firstly, when you've got your clip in the media browser, you can go through here and get a preview of the clip. Also, if you choose this button up the top here, it will open the clips out, and you can see your clips in like a thumbnail kind of icon format, and then you can move your mouse over the clip and see the full length of the clip basically in preview format. From here, what you can also do is use the I and O buttons, which are in and out. So you can pick a point on the clip and press I, and then you can pick a point where you want it to finish and press O, and then if you just drag that piece into here, you'll only have that small portion of clip, which was just that section in there, which is highlighted by the yellow box. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at is cutting clips. So there's a couple of options to trim down a clip. You can click on the end of the clip and move it left or right to choose how much you want to trim it down. What you can also do is that you can also do this from the start. The most common way to do this is by using the blade tool. So if you press B on your keyboard, you'll see that will change there to the blade, and you've got all of your different shortcut keys here for your different main kind of tools that you'll use. So if we use blade, you can then go to a point in time and left click there, and that will then cut that clip into two. To get off blade mode and to go to your normal kind of pointer, you press A, and now you'll see we've got two separate clips. Right, nice and easy. Another way you can do it is by dragging this line here, which is your timeline kind of viewer, and you want to get it to the point of time where you want to cut the clip. As long as you have this button over here selected, it will allow you to have that white line there, and what that white line will do is lock your cursor to it, so that for example when you do select the blade tool, you can cut two clips at exactly the same point of time, as opposed to when you turn it off, there may be like a couple of seconds or millisecond difference, and so one clip may be shorter than the other depending on exactly the point on the clip which you clicked. So the way to transform your footage is to click on your clip, go to the video inspector, and in here you can see the transform option. It may be hidden, so just click the show button there. So there's a couple of things that you can do from here. You can adjust the X and Y axis positions, which are fairly straightforward, but I tend to not kind of like that. I'll show you what I pretty much do. But in order to get them back to how it was, you can either type in 0 here, or you can click the drop down at the end and click reset parameters, and that will bring that back into place. The next thing you can do to position is to click this square box here. So if you click on that, it will now select the footage, and you can drag it and move it wherever you'd like. And there's also a reset button up here, which will then put that back to how it was. You have the scale option, so with this setting you can adjust the size of your clip, and similarly you can click reset parameter, and that will take it back to 100. So by default the scales are all on 100%, so that's your default value. That's pretty much it for the transform. But the next thing we can move on to is the crop. So similarly, we can do a crop, and you've got the options here, which are by left, right, top, or bottom. Again, you can click on the crop icon here, and you can then manually crop. So we may want to bring that down, and then bring the bottom up to get like a widescreen look. So we could do something like that. Again, if you want to show the crop or not, same with any of these settings where you've got a blue tick box, you can untick that and it will bring it back to default and disable the crop, or you can click it to bring the crop back in. Next we're going to be looking at speeding up and slowing down clips. So you can click on your clip and then click the speedometer icon over here, and then you've got a couple of options. So you by default you've got slow with 50, 25 and 10% values. You've got fast by 2, 4, 8 and 20 times. You've got normal, which is the default. You've got hold, which will hold the current frame that you're on. And then the next kind of most important one is you've got custom. But before we move on to custom, you've got the reverse clip, which will allow you to play that clip backwards. So if we click on custom, but you can also press Control, Option and R, which is a very quick way. So if you click on the clip and click Control, Option and R, it'll bring up the custom speed box. In here you can choose your direction, forward or reverse, and you can choose the speed. So for example, if we slow that down 50% and press the return key or the enter button, you can see that's opened it out and drag double the length of the clip and made that 50% slower. So if we show you some of the clip before and then the 50%, you'll see the difference. There we go, you can see it now slowed down, so you've got no slow-mo and then back to normal speed. So that's what you can do from here. You also, once you do that, you can click on here and adjust it. So you may want to slow it down loads. You also can click at the end, and as you move this down, you can see the speed of it will adjust accordingly. So it makes it nice and very easy to kind of slow-mo or speed up some of your clips, right? You can get your audio clip and you can then drag that straight on to the timeline. From here you can see your audio clip on the timeline, and this white line that you have going through, this horizontal line, is your volume adjuster. So you can click and hold and then either go up or down, and you can see, for example, it says 12 decibels, right? So that's the volume that it's currently at. By default it would be on 0. So from here, that's one way of adjusting the volume. Or if you click on your clip and you go to the volume inspector up here, you can also adjust the volume as required. Another way to do it, similar to the other screens, is to reset parameter, and that will bring you back to standard volume. Also from here, what you can do is go to equalization and change the EQ on that. They've got some presets in there, but you also have your full graphic equalizer, which you can adjust. Another thing is, on clips that you record on your microphone, you can do voice isolation, and that will really help tune into your voice. So you can adjust this accordingly onto how much you want it to isolate your voice. Similarly, like the transform and crop, if you tick these boxes, that will enable them, and if you untick, that will disable. Another thing that you can do is, if you've got your clip here, for example, we can go to the transitions tab, and if we go to, for example, fade, so if you use this fade to color and you put this on to the audio clip, so you drag that on, this will then fade in the sound. So you can choose how much of the sound you want it to fade in, so it'll start off quiet and slowly increase up to your volume point, which in this example is 12 decibels. Next, we're going to look at the color inspector. So if you click on your video clip and you go over to the top right and choose color inspector, you can see we've got 3 tabs: color, saturation and exposure. In the color tab, you can adjust the either global or shadows, midtone and highlights to a certain color. So if we do global, we can make the image look more red, yellow, green, blue and so forth. If you double click, it will then adjust it accordingly. So we may just want the shadows to look a bit red, which if we drag the shadows on to the red, you can see how that's impacting or manipulating the image. We're going to leave the color and saturation. We're going to focus on exposure, as this is a kind of beginner's tutorial, and the exposure will get you pretty much what you need. But in saturation, you can use the global adjuster to kind of make your image more saturated or black and white essentially. So if we just pump that up a little bit there and then go to the exposure here, what I'll do is not use the kind of global, but what I'll do is use the shadows, midtones and highlights. So for example, the shadows, we may drop the shadows a little bit or actually increase them. Obviously you need to adjust it according to your clip, but if we drop ours a little bit and up the mid tones and then probably drop down the highlight just slightly to get rid of some of the white kind of impact we're getting from the daylight outside from the window. So if we get it to about there, what you can now see is if you turn it off, it looks like that, and if you put it on, it just makes it pop a little bit, right? So you can adjust this accordingly, depending on your clip. The next thing we're going to do is look at color grading. So if we go into the effects tab on the bottom right hand side and we type into the search box custom LUT, you'll see we've got an effect called custom LUT, and you want to drag that straight onto your clip. What that will do by default is in the top right hand side under the video inspector, you'll see it's enabled this effect which is called custom LUT. A LUT is simply a kind of filter like you get on Instagram or on Snapchat, and it's also like a color profile. So what it will do is allow you to put on different filters, and you can adjust how much of the filter you want on. So guys, in the description I'm also leaving 50 free LUTs, so make sure you click the link and download them, and those are the same ones that you can see over here. So for example, if we look at some of the LUTs, you can see this one is that kind of goldy green kind of effect, and you can see it's set, the mix is on 1.0, which is the max, and if you turn it the other way to 0, it's back to normal as if we had no LUT on there. So then you can use a mix slider to adjust how much of the LUT you want applied, and it really helps you get a cinematic look, or depending on what kind of look you're going for, just a nice kind of balance rather than plain kind of visuals. So you can see, I think I'm going to put it to about there. It just gives us a nice slight greenish kind of colour, and it brings down some of the white. So if we look at it without the LUT, you can see it there, and if you put the LUT on, it gives it that slight cinematic look. Then again, there's plenty of LUTs in here which you can choose from, so you go for something more kind of pink and warm, and depending on your clip and what you wanted to do, you could do that accordingly. But I'm going to leave it as it was on 22. I might just drop it down a bit and get more of that LUT in there, and you can see compared to the other clip, it just gives it that cinematic look, right? So as a quick kind of tutorial for beginners, I think that's about as much as you need to use on the LUT. But once you put your footage together and really apply your LUT and get the right kind of balance on the type of shot you've taken, whether it's outside or indoors, it all kind of depends on what LUT you're going to use, but it'll really step your footage up and make it look really professional compared to without. Alright, next we are going to look at adding text. So on the top left side here you have the text button, and in here you have titles and generators. In generators there's a couple of backgrounds, elements, solids and textures that you can use and drag onto your clip. So you may want to overlay text on top of one of these, and you could literally add it on, put a text layer and use that as a backdrop. What we're going to do is just add text straight to this video clip here. So within titles you can see all of the title and text that is provided by default by Final Cut Pro. You can preview some of them here, so you can see, for example, this one, it will bring it down like this, and then you can add your title, and in this case a subtitle also. There's also a whole bunch of free and paid for titles that you can get online. For example, I've got this one here, and if you just Google that, you will pretty much find it, and you can also download it. And you can see in here they all have different kind of effects, right? So what we are going to do is say drag this one on here, and if you drag it to the timeline, you can see that is your layer for the title. You can then use the end here, and you can drag that to the length of your clip. So now if we just play that from the beginning, you can see it does the effect and then closes out. So first thing what we're going to do is chop our audio here, because we don't need these clips, and this is a very quick look. It's a 4.5 second clip that we're editing on, but it's the same principle that you can apply to your whole timeline. So what we will do is find the point where we can see all the text that we want to edit, and then you can either double click onto the bit of text you want to edit, and we can write I hope you enjoy this tutorial. and then we can double click on the next line of text and say make, like, comment and subscribe. There we go. So you got your two pieces of text here. In the text inspector on this side, you can see you also can either click on the line of text and then edit up here. So what you can do is select your text up here, and then you can change the font to whatever you like. I think in this instance I will leave it as it was. And then another thing you can do is adjust the size by dragging this scrolling bar. There's another thing you can do is adjust the size by adjusting the scroller, or you can also just double click and type your value in here. So let's say if we've done 120 for instance, you'll see it'll resize accordingly. Okay, the next bit is the alignment, so you can make it left aligned, middle or right. And there's also the kind of option for line spacing. So if you've got multiple lines of text, you can adjust the amount of space between each line. The tracking will allow you to adjust the amount of space between each letter. Then you can click the kind of undo reset icon at the end to bring that back to as you wanted. If you click all caps, it will convert it all into caps, which I think in this case looks just a little bit better. So we'll also do that for the top part of the title as well. And then you can adjust the size of your caps as well. So for the rest of them, bar the first letter, which is quite handy, to be honest. Another thing you can do is change the position of your text, similar to how we've done before, and you can do that across the X and Y axes. You can also rotate the text and also change the scale of it, but I would recommend doing that within the font rather than the scale here, otherwise you can notice some clipping along the top. So if we look at our text now and we go back to the start of the clip and play, you can see it looks much better. Right, so we've got our text in here, we have the text doing its animation as we selected, and we've updated the writing to be as per our requirement. The next thing we're going to do is look at the effects. So if you go into the effects tab over here and remove what we had in our search from before, you've got effects broken down into categories. So the video effects and audio effects. So if we go into a video effect and let's, for example, find a black and white effect here, we can drag that onto our video clip. So now when we look at our video clip, we've got it in black and white. What that allows us to do is then manipulate it further by clicking on the clip, going to your video inspector, and under effects you will see the effect that we just added, so black and white. So you can click that to turn it off as we normally do, or you can click it to turn it back on. In here then you can adjust the amount of the effect you want to use. So for this one we can leave it at 100% and it will be black and white. We could find something completely different like this, which doesn't work for every scenario, but depending on your kind of footage, you'll find the effect that you want to use, right? So if we look at it now, we've got a cool kind of comic artistic effect. So you can adjust and play around with the effects as you like, but the key thing to note is you can pick your effect, drag it onto your clip, and then in the video inspector you'll see your effects here, and then you can adjust accordingly. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is look at transitions. So if I drag another clip, for example, so if we drag this clip on here, and if I just extend the audio, there we go. If we drag this clip on here, and what we'll do is do a quick cut and remove either side of that, and then we'll also slow this clip down to 50%. I'll adjust the audio to meet the same length as our video clips, and what we want to do is put a transition in between. So if we look at it first without the transition, you'll see it just cuts straight to the second clip, which when you're doing slow-mo looks quite nice and neat by automatically cutting without transition. But what we can also do is click on the transitions tab, and then you've got a whole bunch of transitions you can use. So you've got a cross dissolve, which kind of dissolves between the two clips. There's all sorts of wipes and stuff like that you can use. There's also a blur, so if we drag that on in between the clips and give that a go, you'll see it blurs through, which is quite nice. So what you want to do basically is use your transitions here, drag them on. You may have to play around with them to find out which one works out kind of best. There's another kind of simple one that a lot of people use is fade to color. So if we pop that in, you'll see it will fade to black and then come back out, and you can choose what color you want it to fade to. So we've chosen black here, but you could say white, for example. So it'll fade to white, and that's your fade to color transition. It's quite basic, but I think a lot of the time you're not really going to be using too many transitions, mainly toward the start and toward the end of your video. You may have bits in between where you have a quick blur transition, but you don't want to overload your video full of transitions. That's a kind of rookie mistake that you don't want to do. You want to keep it looking professional. You'll notice on the transition you've got these two lines on either side, and what you can do is extend the transition. So if you click on the transition and drag it there, you can extend the length of it, and that will basically soften the transition between the two clips. So if we now click play, you'll see it'll start fading white much slower, and then it'll fade out much slower also. Whereas if we make it much smaller, you'll see it'll be more of a quick kind of flash. So that's all we're going to go through on transitions. The next thing we're going to look at is the end result. So what I'll do is edit this slightly. I'll add my fade to color onto my audio clip so it fades in and fades out. And then we have our clip. So before we look at the end result, what you want to do is export the footage. So to export footage, you want to click File, Share, and Export File. Once you get this, you can put the name of your file. You can see the resolution in frames per second, the audio settings, and the length of the actual whole file. And you can see the format it's in and the estimated file size. If you go into settings, you can now adjust this so you can export as either the resolution you picked or lower. You can choose what codec you're using and what format. I tend to leave this on computer and faster encode. And then you've got a couple of actions here, which I tend to leave on save only because you can open up the file and play it after yourself. So if you click in and go on the next button, you can then pick in what folder you want it to export the file. So if we pick our folder, what we'll do is export it here, and you can see it's got the title tutorial, and you want to click the save button. Up on the top left side, you've got this round progress symbol which shows you background tasks. And what you can do is see very quickly, you saw it sharing, which is actually exporting the clip. So now if we look at the end footage, you can see we've got a much more professional looking clip, just with those slight adjustments that we made to LUTs and the color exposure in the color settings, as well as adding the title on and being able to adjust that. I think key things that we learned today are the media layout and importing the files, where things are on the interface, how we add media to the timeline, how we cut clips, how we transform and crop clips, how we speed up and slow down clips, also how do we adjust the audio, the colors, and do very basic color grading, as well as adding text, adding effects, and adding transitions. Alright guys, we're going to finish the video there. I really hope you guys enjoyed. Again, thank you very much for your support. So it really helps me and this channel grow and provide content back to you guys. Like I always say, let me know what you guys want to see next. Drop a comment in the comment section below. Like and subscribe and turn on notifications to stay tuned with my latest videos. Thanks again guys. Peace.